Hi guys, today we're going to learn about liquid volume or capacity. The first thing you need to do is put your title on the top of your page, then you're going to divide it across the middle, and then the bottom section you're going to divide it vertically down to make two sections on the bottom. Remember to pause the video as necessary to give you time to write or cut or glue or anything that you need. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is on the top section, you're just going to cut out and glue your chart for the customary units of liquid volume. Okay, that's all you're going to do on this part. So here we have cup, pint, a quart, a half gallon, and a gallon. Notice that the first one for a cup, it says it's equal to 8 fluid ounces. This word, fluid, is just another way to say liquid. Those two words are synonyms. So if you ever see anything that says fluid ounces, just know that it's talking about liquid. So here we have a couple of real life objects to help us remember what they are. A cup, of course, like it shows here, is about a teacup. The pint is a small container of ice cream, not the big ones that you might get for when you have like a birthday party, but the smaller ones that you might get at home. A quart is the bottle of juice, usually the smaller one. The half gallon, you might see these tall cartons that are for milk that are not a full gallon. Those are usually the half gallons. And then, of course, a gallon, I always think of a gallon of milk when I'm remembering that. All right, so now your page should look something like this. Remember that all of these units measure liquid. So what we're going to do on the bottom section, it's split into two. The first one, you're going to label it measured with units of liquid volume. And the second one, you're going to label it not measured with units of liquid volume. Again, remember to pause the video as you go along whenever you need extra time. Okay, so what we're going to do here is give some examples of things that would be measured using either the cup, the pint, the quart, the gallon, or the half gallon. Since these are liquid volume, obviously the kind of objects we can measure have to be liquid. So one example would be water. Whenever I think of liquids, water is probably the first thing I think of. Another one, like we saw with a gallon especially, milk. Another good example is juice. If you make soup. Now, most of these that we're giving here are food, but one that you might not think of that's liquid is paint. Another one, if you're making fruit punch, maybe your tea, your coffee. And like we saw in the other example, ice cream. Ice cream, when it's frozen, is a solid, but since it comes from cream, milk, it is actually a liquid. It's just like any liquid, when it gets cold enough, it freezes into a solid. So ice cream, we do measure it using liquid volume units. Now, some of the stuff that you would not measure with liquid volume is basically anything that is not a liquid. For example, bread. We would not get a gallon of bread because it's not a liquid. We can't measure it that way. Eggs, when they're not cracked. If you crack the eggs, they can become a liquid. But if you have the egg still in its shell, you would not measure that by liquid volume. Any fruits, they are solids, just like vegetables are solids. Just like animals, even if you're talking about the meat of an animal, the kind that you eat, you still would not measure that using liquid volume. Things like pencils, flowers, gross garbage, or even clothing. These are all examples of things that could not be measured using capacity or liquid volume because they're not liquids. Alrighty, so now your page should look something like this. We have our units of liquid volume chart up on top, and we have a couple of examples of things that can be measured in liquid volume and some things that are not measured in liquid volume. So now we're actually going to go on. We're not quite done yet. Now we're going to go on to the left side of your page. Remember that here when you open your notebook, these two pages should be side by side. You're going to divide your left side just like we did this other side. you're going to divide it in half across the middle, and then the bottom section, you're going to divide it vertically down the middle to make the other two sections. So now the top section, you're going to cut out this other conversion chart. This is called a conversion chart because it's showing you how to turn one measurement into another one. So the first one we have here is the cup. And like our other chart said, 1 cup is equal to 8 fluid ounces. And it's showing you here the little teaspoons. Each one of those is about 1 ounce. So every time you see a cup, it has 8 of those ounces in it. The next one we have is the pint. A pint is equal to 2 cups. So in that pint container, you would be able to fit 2 of those cups inside it. That means that one has 16 fluid ounces. The next one is the quart. The quart is equal to 2 pints. And then finally the gallon is equal to 4 quarts. You can remember that by the word quarts. It's like saying quarter, and we know that it takes 4 quarters to make $1. Or if you think of sports, for example, basketball has the 4 quarters in it. Each quarter is 1/4 of the whole. So for a gallon, you have 4 of them, 4 of the quarts to make the gallon. Now look at the very last column on this chart. It says real world examples. You have real world examples of each of these measurements. For the fluid ounces, you have, for example, a medicine cup. When we're feeling sick, most of those little medicine syrups come with a little measuring cup up on top, and those are usually measured in fluid ounces. Another good example is a small nail polish bottle. For a cup, a small juice pack, or a baby bottle. For a pint, we have a small container of ice cream like the one that was in the picture, or a small bowl of soup. For a quart, the carton of orange juices or the bottle of oil. If you've seen your parents buy those for when they cook, that might be what the measurement that it's using. And finally, the gallon is usually we buy the milk or the water in those big jugs. So now in the bottom section, you have the 2 sections there. Your paper should look like this. Those 2 sections, we're going to label it real life objects measuring capacity, which remember I said is another way to say liquid volume, and real life objects not measuring capacity or liquid volume. What I want you to do now is to go around your house, look through your pantry, look through your cupboards, look through your refrigerator, because that's mostly where you're going to find these real life objects that either measure in liquid volume or don't measure in liquid volume. A good thing to do is to look at labels. Find on the labels and ask your parents to help you if you're not sure where to look. The labels will tell you what it's measuring. So you might see something where it says ounces or cups or pints or quarts or gallons. So look for those containers, things like that that help you see what it's measuring. Remember that liquid volume will be measuring liquids, and things that are not in liquid volume will not be using those measurements for liquid. Be careful when you see ounces. Ounces can be used for solids. When it's liquid ounces, that's when we're talking about capacity. If it just says ounces and you know that it's a solid, then we're not talking about capacity here. We're talking about weight, and that's going to be something that we'll cover later on. So your paper should look like this. Of course, this bottom part should be filled out by you with those real life objects that you found around the house. Don't worry about how many you have down there. Find as many as you can and then be ready to share tomorrow. Don't forget to answer your reflection question and make sure you have your notes ready to discuss. Bye-bye. Sorry, one more thing. Don't forget to watch this video a second time before you answer your reflection question. Bye.